The woman had no shelter for her cattle in the rain until a rancher looked at her and said, "Come with me." The rain began slowly that afternoon, like a warning the sky was giving before something worse arrived. Dark clouds gathered low over the open countryside, turning the air heavy and cold. Wind pushed through the tall grass, bending it flat, and the smell of wet earth spread everywhere. In the middle of that wide, empty land stood a woman with her cattle, completely exposed to the weather. She had no barn, no shed, no roof of any kind. She pulled her worn shawl tighter around her shoulders, even though it did nothing to stop the rain from soaking through. Her clothes were old, patched in places, and already heavy with water. Mud clung to the hem of her dress as she walked back and forth, trying to keep her cattle close together. There were only a few of them, but they were everything she owned. They were her work, her food, her income, and her future. The cattle were uneasy. Rain slid down their backs, and their hooves sank deeper into the soft ground with every step. One of the younger cows let out a low sound, sensing danger. The woman reached out and touched its neck gently, whispering soft words meant to calm it. Her voice shook, not just from the cold, but from fear. She looked around the land again, hoping she might have missed something. A tree line, an old abandoned shelter, anything that could protect them from what was coming. But there was nothing, just open fields stretching in every direction and the storm rolling in fast. This was not the first time she had faced hardship. Life had never been easy for her. She had learned long ago that help did not come quickly, and sometimes it did not come at all. Still, standing there in the rain, she felt smaller than ever. As the rain grew heavier, memories surfaced in her mind. She remembered the time she once had a small piece of land with a simple shelter for her animals. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Then came bad luck, rising costs, and broken promises. One by one, things were taken away until all she had left were these cattle and her own strength. People in nearby villages knew her. They saw her pass with her animals day after day. Some looked at her with quiet sympathy, others with indifference. Very few ever stopped to ask if she needed help. She had stopped expecting it. Now, with thunder rumbling far away, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake by bringing the cattle out that morning. The weather had seemed uncertain, but she needed the grazing land. She always needed something: grass, water, time, money. Survival left no room for perfect choices. The sky suddenly opened up. Rain poured down hard, soaking everything within seconds. The woman raised her arm, trying to shield her face, but the wind pushed the rain sideways. Her hair stuck to her cheeks. Cold ran down her spine. She guided the cattle toward a small rise in the land, hoping higher ground might at least keep them from standing in deep water. The animals followed slowly, slipping and stumbling. Each step felt heavier than the last. Her heart pounded as she counted them again and again, making sure none wandered off in the storm. Losing even one would be a disaster. She called to them, her voice barely heard over the sound of rain hitting the ground. A dirt road ran not far from the field. Occasionally, a vehicle passed by, splashing water as it went. She noticed them, though she didn't look directly. She already knew what would happen. They would slow for a moment, see her standing there, then continue on. They always did. One truck did slow more than the others. Its tires crunched softly on the wet road. For a brief moment, she felt a small flicker of hope rise in her chest. She turned slightly, her eyes searching through the rain, but the truck moved on. The hope disappeared just as quickly, replaced by the familiar feeling of being invisible. The storm showed no sign of easing. Thunder cracked loudly now, closer than before. The cattle grew more restless, pressing close to her as if she were the only safe thing left in the world. She placed herself between them and the wind, even though she knew it made little difference. Her hands were numb from the cold, but she kept moving, kept touching the animals, kept talking to them. She told them they would be all right, even though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. Inside her mind, fear mixed with stubborn determination. She had come too far to give up now. She had survived harder days than this. Still, she could not ignore the truth. If the storm lasted all night, the cattle could fall sick. If one went down, the others might follow. Everything could be lost in a single night. She glanced again toward the road, this time not expecting anything. That was when she noticed another vehicle approaching slowly. Its headlights cut through the rain, steady and bright. It didn't speed past like the others. The woman didn't move. She had learned not to hope too quickly. The vehicle came to a stop. Rain continued to fall between them, heavy and loud. She could not see clearly who was inside, only the shape of a man stepping out. He wore a jacket and a hat pulled low against the rain. His boots sank into the mud as he walked closer, not rushing, not hesitating. The woman felt her body tense. Strangers often brought trouble instead of help. She held her ground, placing herself slightly in front of the cattle without even realizing it. The man stopped a few steps away. He did not shout. He did not make sudden movements. He looked at the cattle first, then at the land around them, and finally at the woman. His eyes took in everything: the lack of shelter, the storm, her soaked clothes, her tired face. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain filled the silence. The woman wondered what he saw when he looked at her. Did he see weakness? Or did he see someone who had been fighting a long battle alone? The man seemed to understand the situation without needing words. He had worked with animals long enough to know what rain like this could do. He knew what it meant to have responsibility for living beings that could not protect themselves. The woman waited, her heart beating hard in her chest. She did not ask for help. She never did. Pride and pain had taught her to stay quiet. The man finally spoke, his voice calm and firm, carrying easily through the rain. "You can't stay out here," he said. She nodded slightly, though she did not reply. She already knew that. He looked once more at the cattle, then back at her. There was no judgment in his expression, only concern and decision. "Come with me," he said. The words hung in the air, simple but heavy with meaning. The woman stared at him, unsure if she had heard correctly. In all the noise of the storm, those three words felt strangely clear. Come with me. Not a question, not an order, an offer. Her mind raced. Who was he? Where would he take them? What would he want in return? Years of hardship made trust difficult. Help often came with conditions, spoken or unspoken. She hesitated, gripping the edge of her shawl, rain dripping from her fingers. The cattle shifted beside her, and thunder rolled again overhead, closer than before. She looked at the man once more. He was still waiting, patient, as if he understood her fear. The rain soaked him too, yet he did not seem bothered by it. Behind her, the storm pressed in. Ahead of her stood a stranger offering shelter she did not have. The woman took a slow breath, standing at the edge of a choice that could change everything, even though she did not yet know how. And in that moment, with rain pouring down and the land offering no protection, her life balanced between staying alone in the storm or taking one step toward the unknown. The woman did not answer right away. Rain kept falling, heavy and cold, drumming against the ground in her shoulders. The man stood there quietly, giving her time. He did not step closer. He did not rush her. That alone felt different from what she was used to. She looked at the cattle again. They were shivering now, their bodies pressed close together. One of them slipped slightly in the mud and struggled to steady itself. Her heart tightened. Waiting longer would only make things worse. Still, fear held her back. She had lived long enough to know that not every offer was safe. Trust had failed her before, but the storm was stronger than her doubts. "Where?" she finally asked, her voice low and unsure. "To my ranch," the man replied. "It's not far, they'll be dry there." He spoke simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. No big promises, no long explanations. She studied his face. Lines from years of outdoor work marked his skin. His eyes were steady, not sharp or demanding. He looked like someone who understood land and weather, someone who had stood in storms before. Another crack of thunder rolled across the sky, closer than before. The cattle stirred again. She nodded once. "All right," she said. The word felt heavy as it left her mouth, but also strange in a good way, like letting go of a burden even if just a little. The man gave a short nod in return. "Follow me," he said. He turned back toward his vehicle, walking carefully through the mud. The woman gathered herself and gently urged the cattle to move. The rain made everything harder. The ground sucked at their feet. Progress was slow, but they moved together. The rancher drove ahead slowly, keeping his lights on so she could see the way. She followed behind with the cattle, guiding them step by step. Water ran into her shoes, her legs aching with every movement, but she did not stop. As they moved, she watched the man's truck carefully. He did not speed up. He did not leave them behind. He waited when the cattle slowed, adjusting his pace to theirs. That small act eased something tight inside her chest. The road curved away from the open field and toward higher ground. Trees appeared along the sides, offering a little protection from the wind. The rain still fell, but it felt less cruel here. The woman focused on the sound of hooves and breathing, counting the cattle again and again. Each one was still with her. That mattered. After some time, lights appeared ahead through the rain. Not village lights, but a few steady ones spread out across open land. Fences came into view, strong and well kept. The ranch. As they approached, the woman felt a mix of relief and nervousness. She had not been on someone else's land like this in a long time. Pride stirred inside her, quiet but present. Still, she kept moving. The cattle needed shelter more than her pride needed comfort. The man parked near a large covered area and got out quickly. He opened a wide gate and motioned for her to bring the cattle in. The shelter was simple but solid, with a strong roof and dry ground beneath. One by one, the cattle stepped inside. The sound of rain softened as soon as they were under cover. Their bodies relaxed almost immediately. One shook itself, sending droplets flying, then stood still, calm. The woman watched, her breath catching in her throat. For the first time since the storm began, she felt the tight grip of fear loosen. She guided the last cow inside and closed the gate carefully. Then she stood there, soaked and tired, listening to the quieter world beneath the shelter. The man moved efficiently, checking the animals with quick, experienced glances. He made sure they had space and fresh water. He did not ask questions yet. He did not comment on her situation. He simply worked. She noticed his movements, confident, practiced, respectful. He handled the animals gently, speaking to them in a low voice. They responded well to him. When he finished, he stepped back and looked at her. "They'll be fine here," he said. "Storm should pass by morning." She nodded, swallowing hard. Words rose in her throat but got stuck. Gratitude mixed with exhaustion, and for a moment she could not speak. "Thank you," she finally managed. He gave a small shrug. Anyone would have done the same. She did not argue, though she knew that wasn't true. The rain continued outside, but inside the shelter the air felt calmer. The man gestured toward a bench near the wall. "You should sit," he said. "You look worn out." She hesitated again, then sat slowly. Her legs trembled now that she had stopped moving. The cold crept in, reminding her how long she had been standing in the storm. The man returned a moment later with a dry blanket. He handed it to her without ceremony. "It's clean," he said. She took it carefully, wrapping it around her shoulders. Warmth spread slowly through her body. She hadn't realized how cold she truly was until that moment. For a while, they sat in silence, listening to the rain on the roof. The cattle shifted quietly nearby, safe and dry. "You don't have shelter of your own?" the man asked gently after some time. She shook her head. "Not anymore." He did not push further. He nodded as if he understood more than she had said. "I didn't plan for the storm," she added quietly, almost as if she needed to explain. "Weather changed fast." "It does," he replied. "Happens to the best of us." His words surprised her. There was no blame in them, no advice she hadn't asked for, just understanding. She looked around the shelter, noticing the care put into everything. The ranch was not fancy, but it was solid, built with patience and effort over many years. "You have a good place here," she said. "It keeps the animals safe," he answered. "That's what matters." The storm outside began to soften, though the rain still fell steadily. Time passed slowly but not uncomfortably. Eventually the woman stood. "I should check them once more," she said, nodding toward the cattle. He smiled faintly. "Go ahead." She moved among the animals, touching each one gently, checking their legs and breathing. All were calm. All were safe. When she returned, she felt lighter somehow. The night no longer felt endless. "I'll take them back once the rain stops," she said. "I don't want to cause trouble." "You're not causing any," he replied. "Stay till morning if you need." She met his eyes, searching for any sign of expectation or condition. There was none. "All right," she said softly. As the night deepened, the storm slowly lost its strength. The woman sat under the shelter, wrapped in the blanket, watching the rain ease. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to rest. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She did not know how she would repay the kindness she had been shown. But for this night, her cattle were safe. And for this night, she was no longer alone. Morning arrived quietly. The storm that had ruled the night was gone, leaving behind a sky washed clean and pale. Soft light slipped through the gaps of the shelter, touching the faces of the cattle as they stirred. The air smelled fresh, mixed with damp earth and grass. For the woman, waking to that calm felt strange, almost unreal. She had not slept deeply. Years of worry had trained her to wake at every sound. Still, resting under a solid roof had made a difference. Her body felt tired but not broken. She sat up slowly, pulling the blanket closer for a moment, then folding it neatly the way she had been taught long ago. The cattle were calm. Some were already chewing slowly, relaxed in a way she had not seen in a long time. She walked among them, checking each one carefully. No signs of sickness, no injuries from the storm. Her chest filled with relief. Outside the shelter, the ranch was waking up. Birds called from the fence posts. Somewhere, a gate creaked open and closed. She could hear footsteps on gravel. The rancher appeared carrying 2 cups of something warm. Steam rose into the cool morning air. He paused when he saw her awake. "Thought you might like this," he said, handing her one of the cups. She took it carefully. The warmth seeped into her fingers immediately. "Thank you," she said. They stood there for a moment, looking out at the land. Sunlight stretched across open fields that seemed to go on forever. Everything looked strong and steady, built with time and care. "How are they?" he asked, nodding toward the cattle. "They're good," she replied. "Better than I hoped." He smiled slightly. "That's good to hear." She hesitated, then spoke. "I'll move them out soon. I don't want to overstay." He shook his head. "No rush. Let the ground dry a bit. Storm made everything soft." She nodded, grateful again for his understanding. As the morning went on, she helped where she could, even without being asked. She cleaned a little around the shelter, refilled water, and kept an eye on the cattle. Working kept her mind busy. It was easier than sitting still and thinking. The rancher noticed but did not stop her. He worked nearby, fixing a fence post that had loosened in the storm. His movements were calm and practiced. There was no rush in him, only purpose. Eventually, they found themselves working side by side. "You've handled cattle a long time," he said. "All my life," she replied. "It's what I know," he nodded. "It shows." The simple acknowledgement warmed her more than the drink had. They spoke little at first. Just small, practical words about the weather, the land, the animals. But even in the silence, there was no discomfort. It felt like working with someone who understood without needing explanations. Later, as the sun climbed higher, she paused and looked across the ranch again. Strong fences, dry shelters, healthy animals. It was clear this place had been built through years of effort. "You did all this yourself?" she asked. "Most of it," he said. "With time." She thought of her own path, how much had been lost along the way. Not through laziness or carelessness, but through bad luck and hard seasons. "I used to have something like this," she said quietly. "Not as big, but it was enough." He listened without interrupting. "Things changed," she continued. "Land got sold, costs went up. Promises didn't hold. One day there was no shelter left." He nodded slowly. "Happens more often than people think." She glanced at him. "Most people don't say that." He shrugged. "Most people haven't been there." The words settled between them, heavy but honest. By midday, the ground had firmed enough to walk without sinking. The woman knew it was time to leave. The thought filled her with mixed feelings. Relief, because she could move on. Sadness, because this place had given her something she hadn't felt in a long time: security. She gathered her things, folding the blanket and carrying it to the rancher. "I need to return this," she said. He waved his hand. "You can keep it, I have others." She hesitated. "I don't like taking more than I should." He looked at her carefully. "You're not taking. It's given." She accepted it slowly, nodding. "Then thank you." She began leading the cattle toward the gate. They moved calmly, well-rested and steady on their feet. As they reached the edge of the ranch, she stopped. "I don't know how to repay you," she said, turning back to him. He leaned against the fence. "You already did. You took care of your animals. That matters." She studied his face, searching again for any hidden expectation. There was none. "Still," she said, "if you ever need help," he smiled. "I'll remember." She led the cattle forward, stepping back onto the open land. The fields no longer felt as empty as they had the day before. She glanced back once more. The rancher stood where she left him, watching until she was well on her way. As she walked, she felt something new settle inside her, not just gratitude but a quiet strength. The storm had passed. Her cattle were safe. And she had been reminded that kindness still existed, even when she least expected it. But as the ranch faded behind her, another thought took shape in her mind. Shelter for one night was a blessing. Shelter for the future was a question she still had no answer to. And that question would soon return, stronger than before. The days after the storm were harder than the woman expected. The land looked peaceful under the clear sky, but the ground still held too much water in some places and too little grass in others. She moved her cattle carefully from one patch to another, always watching the sky, always measuring time. Every decision mattered. At night, she thought about the ranch more than she wanted to admit. The strong shelter, the quiet safety, the way the cattle had rested without fear. Those memories stayed with her, especially when the wind picked up or clouds gathered again. She did not like depending on thoughts of someone else. Her life had taught her to rely only on her own hands. Still, the truth was clear. One more heavy rain could undo everything she had saved. 2 days later, dark clouds returned. The woman noticed them early in the morning. She stood still, watching the horizon as the sky slowly changed color. The air grew thick, the same way it had before the last storm. Birds grew quiet, the cattle shifted uneasily. Her stomach tightened. She checked her surroundings again. No shelter. No high ground nearby this time. The grass was thin and the soil soft. She did not panic, but fear pressed in. She knew what could happen. She had already seen it once. As the wind began to rise, a choice formed in her mind, one she had tried to avoid. She could keep moving and hope the storm passed quickly, or she could return to the ranch and ask for help again. Asking twice felt heavier than asking once. Pride whispered that she should handle it herself. Experience whispered that pride would not protect the cattle. She stood there for a long time, rain beginning as light drops on her hands. Then she turned them around. The walk back to the ranch felt longer this time. Not because of distance, but because of doubt. Questions filled her mind. Would she be welcome? Would she be a burden? Would the kindness still be there? The rain strengthened as she reached the familiar fence line. Her heart beat fast as she approached the gate. The rancher noticed her before she called out. He was repairing equipment near the barn. When he looked up and saw her and the cattle, he did not seem surprised. "You saw the clouds too," he said. She nodded. "I didn't know where else to go." "You came to the right place." he replied. The simple answer eased something deep inside her. He opened the gate without hesitation and helped guide the cattle inside the shelter again. The rain picked up just as the last animal stepped under the roof. Once more the sound of rain softened. Once more the cattle settled. This time the woman felt both relief and shame. She stood quietly, hands folded, unsure what to say. "I don't want to make a habit of this," she said at last. "I just need time." The rancher leaned against a post, thinking. "Storm season doesn't give much time," he said. "Land either has shelter or it doesn't." She looked down. "I know." He studied her for a moment, then spoke. "Have you thought about staying longer?" The question surprised her. She looked up quickly. "I can't afford anything." "I didn't ask about money," he replied calmly. Silence filled the shelter. The rain drummed on the roof. "I'm not offering charity," he continued. "I could use help. You know cattle, you work hard. You could stay through the season, we'd both benefit." Her mind struggled to catch up with his words. Work in exchange for shelter, dignity instead of pity. "You'd trust me with your land?" she asked. "I already trust you with animals," he said. "That tells me enough." Her eyes stung, but she blinked it away. She had not been spoken to like this in a long time, not as someone in need, but as someone with value. "I don't want to be in the way," she said. "You wouldn't be," he replied. "This place was built to be shared." They talked more as the rain continued, about expectations, about work, about boundaries. Everything was simple and clear, no hidden conditions. By the time the rain slowed, the woman felt something she had not felt in years, a steady ground beneath her future. That night she did not sleep in the open field. She rested near the shelter, listening to rain fade into silence. The cattle were safe again, but so was something else, her hope. She knew nothing was permanent. She knew life could still change. But for now she had found more than shelter. She had found a place where she belonged. And as the sky cleared once again, the woman realized that sometimes survival does not mean standing alone. Sometimes it means knowing when to step through an open gate. The season slowly changed after that. The rain did not disappear completely, but it came softer, more predictable. Days grew warmer. Grass began to rise again, green and strong. Life at the ranch settled into a steady rhythm, one the woman had not known for a very long time. She stayed. At first, everything felt temporary, as if she were only passing through. She woke early each morning, sometimes before the rancher, and checked the cattle, hers and his. She cleaned, repaired small things, and worked the land with quiet focus. She never waited to be told what to do. Work had always been her language. The rancher noticed. "You don't miss much," he said one morning as they watched the animals graze. "You learn to see everything when losing one thing can change your whole life," she replied. He nodded. He understood that kind of thinking. Days turned into weeks. The cattle grew stronger. The land recovered. The storms came and went, but shelter was no longer a question. When rain fell, it fell on roofs that held firm. The woman slowly stopped counting days. She stopped waking up with fear pressing on her chest. She stopped planning where to run if the weather turned. For the first time in years, she planned forward. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft colors, she sat on a fence and watched the cattle settle for the night. The rancher joined her, handing her a cup of warm tea like he had on that first morning. "You've made a difference here," he said. She smiled faintly. "So have you." He looked out over the land. "I built this place to survive, didn't think much about sharing it." She did not answer right away. "Sometimes," she said slowly, "sharing is what keeps things alive." He glanced at her, thoughtful. Word spread slowly in nearby areas. People noticed the ranch growing steadier, stronger. They noticed the woman working beside the rancher, not as a guest, but as part of the land. Some were surprised. Some were quiet. A few offered small nods of respect. She did not seek their approval. She had found something better. One afternoon, a sudden issue arose when a young calf wandered too close to the fence and injured its leg. The woman noticed immediately. She moved quickly, calm and steady, guiding the animal to safety and tending to it with care. The rancher watched silently. "You handled that well," he said afterward. "I've had to," she replied, "when no one else was there." He looked at her with new understanding. That night they sat near the shelter, listening to the quiet sounds of animals resting. "I want to ask you something," he said. She turned to him. "All right. This place, it doesn't need to belong to just one person," he said carefully. "I could use a partner. Someone who understands the work, the responsibility." She held her breath. "I'm not offering comfort," he added. "I'm offering shared ground, shared decisions." Her heart beat fast, not with fear this time, but with weight. This was not kindness alone. This was trust. "I won't pretend I haven't lost before," she said, "and I won't promise things I can't control." He nodded. "I wouldn't ask you to." They sat quietly, letting the meaning settle. In the days that followed, the woman thought deeply about her past, about what she had lost, about what she had found. She realized something important. The storm had not just brought rain, it had brought a turning point. If she had stayed in the open field that day, fear would have won. But she had taken one step forward instead, and that step had changed everything. She agreed, not with celebration, not with big words, just a simple understanding between two people who respected the land and the work it demanded. The ranch slowly became something new, not just a place of shelter, but a place of shared purpose. Months later, another storm came, strong winds, heavy rain. This time the woman stood under the shelter, watching the rain fall beyond the fence. The cattle were calm, the land held steady. She did not feel small anymore. She remembered the night she had stood in the open field, soaked and afraid, shielding her cattle with nothing but her own body. She remembered the man who had stopped and said, "Come with me." Now she understood something clearly. Help does not always come as rescue. Sometimes it comes as a door that opens and stays open. As the storm passed and the sky cleared once more, the woman stood tall on the land she now helped protect. She had not just found shelter for her cattle, she had found shelter for her life. And it all began with one storm, one choice, and one human moment of kindness that grew into something lasting.